Hey YouTube, it's Dimitri, and today we're going to talk about company culture. So this is probably one of my favorite kind of topics to talk about. Most of my fun stories kind of pinned on the fact of company culture. So when I get together with old friends and colleagues and we joke about, oh, I remember working at X, Y, and Z and it was great because, I remember this one story, and we joke about it. But I think a lot of this is kind of ingrained in company culture itself. I also think that company culture is probably the most important question that somebody can ask during an interview. So when you're interviewing for a job, I typically will ask oh, can you describe the company culture to me? And I think a lot of people that are doing the interviewing provide very terrible examples because they haven't really thought deeply about the company culture where they work. Or they're going to basically kind of twist the truth a little bit or not give you an honest opinion because they want you to work there. So they're not going to give you the negative feedback. And also if they give you negative feedback and then you end up working there, then you end up saying to somebody else hey, this person interviewed me and they didn't like working here. They didn't like the culture. It looks bad. But anyways, I'm going to dive on in here. And I think culture could be broken down in 3 tiers. And then based on these 3 tiers, there's actually 3 characteristics, I believe, in culture itself. The 3 tiers for culture in a job, I believe it starts with company culture. That's the overall company kind of memo, their characteristics and things they believe in. And then you step down, you'll typically have team culture. So if you have a risk team or a development team or a validation team or a trading team, right? Your team will have its own culture. And then I think the last level is kind of that interpersonal culture or relationship. The reason I break this down is because typically you'll have your corporate culture, your team culture, and then you'll have culture with your manager specifically, as well as culture with different individuals around the company. So I think company culture can be broken down into 3 characteristics. It's company structure, kind of your top priority, and then your education priority. So company structure can be broken down, I think, into 2 classes. You're going to have flat and you're going to have a hierarchy. So some companies are very, very flat. Title doesn't really mean a lot. A lot of people just work side by side regardless of your title. Other companies are very hierarchical in the fact that you have different layers. So you report to somebody and they report to somebody else. And a lot of times you're not allowed to go around different layers. And so having a hierarchy can be beneficial for some people, but it can be a drawback for other people. And the second one here is top priority. So I think a lot of companies have 2 focuses when hiring. They look for a team fit, kind of a personality fit, or they look for a very skilled and experienced focused fit. So quickly, just to discuss this, a lot of companies, for example, such as these tech companies, a lot of times they focus primarily on the cultural fit. So you need to have a similar culture and expectation and excitement, right? It's kind of this culture is more important aspect. And it's not saying that they don't hire on skill. It's just the cultural aspect, the personality fit and fitting the team is the #1 goal. And then definitely they have to meet, basic skill levels and experience. But again, that top focus is on the personality, I think, more so kind of the team fit. The second one is skill-based. And I've seen companies that primarily focus on skills. So they're looking for super, super high-end individuals. They've designed their culture in a way that people can work independently. And so having that advanced skill is more beneficial to the company and the team. But again, it's more focused on your skills and experience and not on your personality or kind of your team fit. And then the third one, I think, is kind of the educational priority aspect. I think there's 2 ways to look at this. The one is BAU, so business as usual, and the other one is innovation. Some companies, some specific jobs, for example, need to focus on business as usual. Everything's developed. They're all about optimizing, getting things done efficiently. And that's great. A lot of people do well in these structured environments. Well, you come in, you do X, Y, and Z every day, and you repeat, and you just get stuff done, and you're productive, and you feel great because you're productive. On the other side, you have companies more, I guess, along the line, like startups and techs, companies and things like that, where you're more focused on the innovation side. So you have your business as usual, right? You're doing your job, but then also the main focus of that company is generating new technology and new methods and new ways to do things. And so I think that's kind of the last piece here on this characteristics. I'm going to run through 4 different jobs in no particular order. I'm just going to call them 1, 2, 3, 4 to keep them, not kind of, I guess, hidden somewhat, but not to call out specific companies and kind of discuss their culture in detail. All right, so my first company I'm going to talk about here, their three characteristics were hierarchy for the company structure, team-based for the hiring, and BAU as the kind of the goal of the education priority here. This company was good in many senses in the fact that like, it was nice that we were always busy. We were always focused on like the BAU, the business, getting things done as fast and efficiently as possible. But on this downside here, right, it was a difficult challenge for me working here. And it's not because the company was bad, it's just the cultural fit wasn't good. The reason is they hired people based on team and team alone. That was their main focus. They wanted people that were team players, that had this personality fit. And I didn't fit the personality fit for that company. They were very, very focused on the hierarchy as well, which didn't fit and didn't bode well with me. I'm kind of a free spirit, and so having to be like in these very strict hierarchies was difficult. Some of the bad things is there was a very, very negative connotation between those doing the work, labeled as the quant side, those helping with project management, labeled as the business side, and then those being labeled as like management, I guess. The business side, the management side didn't really treat the quant side very well. I have all kinds of stories about this company, but we'd been pulled aside. I'd been talked to. They didn't like that we were doing stuff. They didn't like that we were actually like innovating and self-learning. They were just driven into hurry, 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 get it done. Basically, I didn't fit well here and I didn't really work there very long. So that was I'm gonna just call it company number one. Company number two here was a challenge and an interesting company to work for. Their three characteristics mainly were like a flat hierarchy, it was very skill-based, and it was very innovative. This is typically like companies like tech companies and startups. The reason being is we didn't have processes and systems in place. So the innovation side was like, we need to get stuff done, like the business as usual, but there was no such thing as business as usual. It was your job just to get this thing done. And you had to come up with your own process, your own procedure. Everything was up to you. There was no teams to like help you with processes and governance. Like you were just diving in and getting it done. And I absolutely loved this. I was treated very well. The company loved me. They respected me. I was a crucial part of the team. But it was stressful. Working at different companies can be stressful for the amount of work. And again, creating your own processes and procedures and literally everything rides on you can be kind of the downside of this. But for me, it was a great fit. I had my freedom to run and do what I needed. It was very results driven, right? Because everything was based on getting stuff done. And there wasn't a lot of help, which is the stress side. But in general, I really liked working for this company in this environment. And then company three here we're going to talk about. It has a mixed hierarchy / flat structure. It was team focused in hiring and it was BAU. So this is an interesting mix. So the reason I say flat and hierarchy is because there are clear defined hierarchy in place, but at like the team levels, so not the corporate level is very hierarchy based, but the team levels are somewhat flatter. So you're going to have like a manager, for example, and then you're going to have a couple different types of employees, like different levels and rankings, but literally everybody reports into the same person. The goal here was they hired a lot of people that they knew personally, and I think this comes back on the fact of yes, they do have some of the skills required, but on the flip side, I think it was more team focused. So they hired lots of people that they knew, people that they liked, people they thought fit well. But my issue with the team was that the skills are something that I like to do a lot. And I get frustrated working with people who don't know what they're doing because they're supposed to know what they're doing, which is why they hired you to do this position. That's why I'm hired to do this other position. And so there was a lot of butting heads in general, but overall I like the company. I think I fit well at that company. We worked well together. We finally got like this good cohesion going where I kind of integrated into the team structure, the team culture. Again, this company was BAU, so business as usual focused. All they really cared about was getting stuff done a lot of times. And it's not to say that they didn't want to innovate. They did want to innovate, but a lot of times there's just hurdles involved. And with big companies in general, on most of these people I've worked for, it's always hard to do the innovation part if that's not ingrained at the corporate, high level. It was allowed on the team levels, but I think a lot of times there was just a struggle to get everybody on board. And then sometimes getting on like smaller teams or part of a bigger department and getting the entire department going with that was difficult. But I liked it. I had fairly good freedom. They allowed me to do what I wanted to do. I could be innovative on my own. I didn't necessarily fit the team in that aspect, but I liked working there. It was a better cultural fit than the first one by far. I've enjoyed that company for a long time. Again, when I say a long time, for me, like a year's a long time in a lot of these companies, but that was a great company to work for. And then the final company I'm going to call company 4 here. So go back to the last one, the company 3. One of the things that kind of bugged me and kind of rubs me the wrong way is that the loudest person on the team is the person that gets the most respect. I had nothing to do with skill-based. A lot of times people would come in and like tout like how great they were and they were genius and smart. And everybody's like, oh man, this guy's really brilliant, right? He's a hero. He's amazing. He's going to change everything. And then these people that touted all these great things never delivered. And yet they continued to be like corporate favorites, which just drove me nuts. So that was a hard aspect on company 3. And then this segues me into company 4, which is even a weirder dynamic. Company 4, again, is the flat/hierarchy structure. Big hierarchy structure, very clearly defined on the corporate level here. Going down though, they had more like, again, the same concept where it's like a lot of people reported to one like director or manager, and then they had like different levels within. But at the end of the day, it was fairly flat. You were well connected high up, so you could get more stuff done, which I liked. They were team fit, and they were the mix of business as usual and innovation, which is not very common. I loved this company for many aspects, but going back to the like other company where like the loudest person was the most respected, this company was weird in an aspect that some of the people there I worked with, some that were managers, some same level, you know, different people throughout, actually thought I was like really bright, and they well respected me, and my opinion is well valued. I absolutely loved this about this company. I felt like when somebody asked you for something, they meant it. Like they're trying to do something, you're clearly an expert, they need your help. They'll listen, they'll take it into consideration. They'll even like argue with you and try to find the best solution. And I love this. But then on the flip side of this, there were groups that were highly, I guess, discriminatory in the fact that those that had PhDs were much better than those that did not have PhDs. And so this caused a lot of grind with me because I have a master's. But at the same time in this company, I was carrying a lot of the teams. I was doing the vast majority of work on specific teams. I was working across multiple managers and teams. None of this was in my job description at all. And yet I felt like I was carrying the team, but then being essentially like treated not as well because I didn't have the PhD. So there was this weird dynamic. Like some people absolutely loved that. They treated me great and amazing, and they were very appreciative of the work I did. And then on the flip side of this, there was the team or the people in some of these different areas that treated you not so well because you didn't have a PhD, even when you took the projects that the PhDs couldn't solve and you solved them and had better solutions. So this was kind of my grind. The BAU and innovation part of this is they had one very specific goal they had to do as a company and as a team. So again, company structure, team structure, we played into the overall company structure well. And we had good representation of senior management, which made our jobs a lot easier, made it easier to get resources. But at the same time, you had this kind of dual dynamic, which was nice and I liked. You had some people that were very innovative driven, that were in like a senior position, a management position. They wanted you to spend your extra time learning and, you know, getting things done and coming up with new innovations and excitement. Like it was good. It was fun. You could talk to people about these different options and kind of like aspects of the job. But then we also had different managers, different people, I think, that were so focused on the BAU. We were just driving deep, hurry to get stuff done. But I really liked this aspect of the company. I liked being able to like really target this goal, really add value to the company, try to get noticed by senior management, get everything done. But on the flip side, like behind closed doors, when things are a little bit slower, you are being pushed a little bit to be self-innovative and to be working on self-projects. So that's my kind of summary here. I'm hoping you guys really see here that how the company is structured makes a big difference on the corporate level. Having your team level is different. So for example, a lot of companies do not allow working from home, especially in the banking industry. However, risk management departments and teams do allow working from home. And so this cultural aspect is something that your team will be able to explain and talk about, but yet at a company level, they will not be able to. This comes down also to the manager level. So I've had managers I've absolutely loved. I think most of my managers I've always liked. I've butted heads with almost all of them at some point. I'm kind of a difficult person to work for, and I am the first person to tell you that. But at the same time, we've all worked really well together. It usually takes me 6 months to a year to get kind of into a position and done well. And once I get going, I usually do really well. We end up building good relationships. And building relationships, I think, is a crucial portion because, one, if your manager doesn't like you, the chance you're getting promoted is less likely. I think most managers are usually pretty fair in the fact that they realize who's doing what type of work, who's doing what contributions, and usually you get paid bonuses and compensations and like promotions based on that. So overall, I've had great experience across the board everywhere. But also being able to build relationships with your managers and your colleagues at the lowest level, I think is very, very important, and the fact that it makes you able to communicate better. It makes your team more dynamic. It makes it function better. So this kind of goes up to the team level, right? Having that team fit, I think, is also important. I don't want to neglect that and say like skills is the only way to go. But again, what I prefer, I think typically is more like the freedom base. So having like the flat structure I really like, having the skill-based focus is something I really like, but on the flip side, right, I still need to have good team dynamics. I need good people to work with. I need people that have stuff in common with me. And I think a lot of the companies I've worked at have had good teams and have hired good cultural fits in that aspect. And then finally, the BAU versus innovation. I think my preference is the blend. And a lot of companies I've worked with have somewhat of a blend, but I think some companies focus too much on getting like the business done, the business as usual done. And then when it comes time to actually like solve a difficult problem, they just can't solve it because they don't have the innovative part. They haven't learned that new piece. So like right now, data science is big. Having all these different tools, being able to apply them to different problems is beneficial. I think it is absolutely nuts and crazy when companies, especially that first company I mentioned I didn't fit well with, they hated the self-learning part. They would yell and scream and have meltdowns about it. And I got pulled aside multiple times with complaints that you're not allowed to be self-learning. This is ridiculous because we had literally nothing else to do and we discussed this, and anyways, it was just a bad situation. I'm glad I don't work there anymore, but we had issues with that. That being said, when those projects came up at that company, I was essentially the lead. I was leading projects above my managers that I had because they had no clue what was going on. And so for me, like that perfect mix is like, I like to get stuff done. I like to be productive. I like to show senior management, my manager, my team, like as a group here, we're getting things done, we're efficient, we're completing goals for the corporate structure and the team. So the business as usual is great, but I think it's good in that perfect mix of like 30-70 or like 40-60 mix, where the majority is focused on the BAU part, and then a little bit more of that, like the smaller piece, right, is focused on like the self-learning. I think it's great to get involved. One of the companies I've worked for has this brown bag session, which sometimes can be a huge waste of time, but other times it's really fascinating. It's where the company actually has somebody present a topic in a presentation, and these can be a lot of fun, and they can be very rewarding because you can learn things and you can learn more about the people that are on your team or even outside of your team, like in a department. But anyways, that's kind of it, guys. I think that's something you should really think about. You should really consider. And when you go into the interviews, don't just ask like, how is the culture, right? You might ask that to start with, but a lot of specific questions will give you better answers. Like, would you say the company is more, like business as usual focused, or do you think it's more like innovative and has like a focus on self-learning? And usually like the interviewer will give you like a dynamics of like, well, we're usually BAU focused like most corporations, but we do, push innovative learning. Or they might say, no, we don't really do that. You need to do that in your free time. Again, ask about like the different like hierarchy. Who do you report to? Again, this is important to figure out like how many levels and layers you have, how the team dynamics are going to work. But anyways, those are kind of my tips and tricks here. I would definitely consider these things when you're looking for a job. I've actually turned jobs down because of the fact that the cultural fit was not good. Compensation was great. Location was great. Cultural fit, not so good, so I turned them down. I think it makes a big difference, again, on your promotion, your career path, how happy you are at your job every day, which is something I think a lot of people miss. It's not always about the money. It's not always about the compensation. A lot of times it comes down to being able to go to work and be happy and like the people you work with, like the company you work with, and feel like you're making an impact. So anyways, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, until next time.